There is an old saying in ranch country that a debt written in ink can be forgotten, but a debt written in kindness never dies. It only waits. I have carried this story for a long time, the way you carry a smooth stone in your pocket, and I promise you it is true in every way that matters. Before it ends, a banker is going to stand in front of the whole county and hear a page from his own ledger read out loud, and that single page is going to ruin him. But this story is not really about the banker. It is about a woman who rode into Ash Hollow, Wyoming in the spring of 1883, answering an advertisement for a ranch hand, and about the secret she carried folded up inside her, like a letter she refused to open. Stay with me for the reveal, because you will not see it coming, and stay for the love that grew up quietly around it, because that is the part that will stay with you. Beckett Sumner stood at the Ash Hollow corral with his hat pushed back and his patience wearing thin, waiting on the hired man who had answered his notice in the county paper. He had written it plain. Wanted, one experienced hand for Red Willow Ranch, must know cattle, horses, and hard work. Wages fair, no drinkers. 3 men had answered over the winter, and 2 had quit before calving, and 1 had never come at all, and Beckett had begun to believe that Providence had a particular grudge against him. He was 31 years old. He owed the Ash Hollow Bank more money than he could say out loud without his voice going strange, and the grass on Red Willow was greening up with nobody but old Amos to ride it. The letter he had received was signed only W. Prentice, in a hand so neat and square it looked almost printed. The letter said the writer had worked cattle in the Wind River country, could rope, brand, doctor stock, break a green horse gentle, and keep accounts besides. Beckett had read it 3 times and hired the man by return post, without ever thinking to wonder about that first initial. So when a rider came down the town road on a raw-boned buckskin, sitting the saddle the way water sits in a glass, level and easy no matter what the horse did underneath, Beckett straightened up and raised a hand. And when the rider stopped at the corral and swung down and took off a dusty hat, and a braid of brown hair fell down against a woman's shoulder, Beckett's hand stayed up in the air like he had forgotten what it was for. "You would be Sumner," she said. "I'm Willa Prentice. I wrote you about the work." "You're W. Prentice." "I am. And before you say what you're fixing to say, let me save us both the time." She looped her reins once around the rail, unhurried. "I came for the ranch hand work, not a wife. I have read enough of those advertisements to know the difference, and I am not confused about which one you posted. I can rope anything with 4 legs, I can pull a calf at 2 in the morning, I can doctor screwworm and foot rot, and I can keep books that balance to the penny. If you want to see it before you decide, that suits me. If a woman drawing wages offends you, I will water my horse and be gone by noon, and no hard feelings either way." Somewhere behind Beckett, in the corral, his half-broke grey colt chose that moment to spook at a flapping feed sack and go crashing along the rails, wild-eyed and blowing. Willa did not wait to be asked. She slipped through the rails, moving slow and angling her body away, talking low, a sound with no particular words in it, the way rain talks on a roof. The colt trembled and rolled its eye at her, and she stood there patient as fence posts until the trembling ran out of it, and then she had her hand flat on its neck, and the colt lowered its head and sighed like a schoolboy caught at nothing. The whole thing took maybe 4 minutes. Beckett watched every second of it. "The bunkhouse won't do," he said at last. "You can have the cabin by the creek. It's sound, the stove draw's good. Wages are what I posted. Work starts tomorrow." "Work starts today," Willa said, and that was the whole of the negotiation. That evening she sat at his kitchen table while the coffee went cold between them, because he had decided she ought to know what she was hiring onto before she unpacked. He laid the papers out flat, the note from the Ash Hollow Bank, the interest figured in Horace Dunmore's slick copperplate hand, and the letter that had come in March advising him that the bank intended to call the note due in full at the fall cattle sale, unless satisfactory arrangements were made. Satisfactory arrangements, Beckett said, meant signing over Red Willow to Dunmore for about 1/3 of its worth and being grateful for the privilege. "My father took that loan in the hard winter, back in 1877, Beckett said, turning his cup in slow circles. "The winter that killed half the cattle in the territory. He never talked about it after. He was not a man to owe anybody, and I think it shamed him. He died 2 years back, and the note came to me with the land. I have paid on it faithful. But Dunmore bought the Ash Hollow Bank 3 years back, and he has bought up half the paper in this county, and Red Willow has the best water for 30 miles, and a man like that does not want your payments. He wants your deed." Willa sat very still while he talked. He took her stillness for attention, and it was attention, but it was something else besides. Because she knew this ranch. She had known it the moment she saw the name on the advertisement, and she had answered it anyway, and now she sat at this table with her heart going like a shod horse on hard ground, saying nothing. The winter of 1877 was the winter her own father, Marcus Prentice, horse trader of the Wind River country, had ridden south with everything he had saved, and come home in the spring lean and quiet and poorer, and would only ever say that he had done a thing that needed doing. She had been 17 years old. She had not learned the rest of it until she was going through his papers after the fever took him, 1 year ago this month, and what she had learned, she had told no one at all. "I'm sorry about your father," was all she said. "He was smart enough to hold this place through the worst winter God ever sent," Beckett said. "I would like to be smart enough to hold it through Horace Dunmore." Now let me tell you what kind of hand Willa Prentice turned out to be, because the men of that country did not give respect away. They made you pull it out of them like a stump. In her second week, a 3-year-old heifer went down in a bog hole in the far Willow Flats with a torn shoulder gone bad, and Amos, the grey-whiskered hand who had ridden for Beckett's father 20 years, allowed there was nothing to do but put her down. Willa built a loop, laid it soft as a lady's glove over the heifer's horns, dallied, and talked her buckskin backward one careful step at a time until the bog let go with a sound like a kiss. Then she knelt in the mud for the better part of an hour, cleaned the wound down to good flesh, packed it with a salve she mixed herself from carbolic and lard, and rigged a sling shade so the animal could mend out of the sun. The heifer lived. Amos never said a word about it, but the next morning at the corral he stepped back from the gate and let her ride through first, and in the language of old cowmen, that is a speech with 3 verses and an amen. The books took her 4 evenings. Beckett's ledger was an honest man's mess. Calves counted twice, wolf bounties never entered, receipts folded into a cigar box like autumn leaves. Willa laid it all straight in her square-printed hand, and when she was done she showed him that he was worth more than he thought, and owed less than he feared, and that Dunmore's interest arithmetic had been quietly wrong in the bank's favour for 3 years running. "It is a small steal," she said, tapping the column. "Small enough to call a mistake if he is caught, but a man who will steal small where you cannot see is practising to steal big where you can. The days went into weeks the way creek water goes into a river, without any seam you could point to. They rode fence lines together in the long yellow evenings. They branded late calves in a drift of dust and bawling. Sundays, Beckett read from his mother's Bible on the porch, halting at the hard names, and Willa mended tack with an awl and did not let on that she noticed his halting, and the silence between them got to be the comfortable kind, the kind you can lean on. She caught herself saying our east pasture to Amos one morning, and went around the rest of the day careful and troubled, like a woman who has heard her own heart say something out loud. At night, in the creek cabin, she took out her father's papers and read them again by candlelight, and put them away again, and did not sleep. If this story has caught hold of your heart, friend, stay with me now, because everything Willa Prentice is hiding is about to come due, all at once the way debts do. Dunmore came out to Red Willow himself in July, rolling up in a folding-top buggy and a town coat the colour of a dove. He drew rein by the corrals, smiled a smile that never got as far as his eyes, and ran that smile over the fat cattle on the flats, the way some men look at a supper laid for somebody else. He did not get down. Men like Dunmore never get down. "I hear you have taken on a woman to make your hay," he said. "That has a flavour of desperation, Sumner. It will read poorly at the sale when folks reckon up how this outfit came apart. I'm prepared, out of regard for your late father, to offer you $1,100 for a clean deed and a quiet signature, and you may ride away from your debt a free man. It is a kindness. I advise you to take it, because in October I will take the ranch anyhow, and the kindness will not be repeated." "The hay is in the barn, Mr. Dunmore," Willa said, before Beckett could open his mouth. She stepped up beside the buggy and looked at him the way she would look at a horse she did not intend to buy. "I stacked it. Come October, you are welcome to count it. While you are counting, you might have another look at your interest tables. Whoever figures them for you has been carrying an error 3 years, and it always errs your direction. It would be a shame if the county recorder heard that a banking man could not do sums." For one bare second, the smiling stopped. Then it came back, hung a little crooked. "You keep spirited help, Sumner," Dunmore said, and clucked to his team, and rolled away, trailing dust and the smell of bay rum. Beckett watched the buggy shrink down the road, and then he looked at Willa a long moment. "You may be the first person in 10 years to knock the smile off that man," he said. It was worth being threatened just to watch. The letter from Reuben Coulter came a week after. Coulter had been her father's partner in the horse trade, a blunt old man with a good heart and no patience, and he was the only living soul who knew what Willa's saddlebag carried. His letter did not waste ink. "Girl," he wrote, "I hear Dunmore is fixing to swallow Red Willow whole at the fall sale. You know what your daddy left you. You are working for day wages on land the law says is half yours, and that is either the most patient thing I ever heard of or the most foolish. Ride to the county seat, put your paper on the record, and claim what is yours before that fat spider claims it first. Marcus did not save that ranch so his daughter could muck its stalls." Willa sat on the cabin step with the letter until the light went. What Coulter did not understand, and what she could hardly lay words to herself, was that the paper felt like a trap on both sides. Announce it, and she would never again know whether her place at Red Willow was earned or merely deeded, whether Beckett's eyes went warm at her because of who she was or because of what she held. She had spent her whole life being weighed and found convenient. She would not be a lien on the man. She wrote Coulter back 4 lines. "I hear you. I am not running, and I am not hiding. I am choosing my ground. There is more than one way to fight for a ranch, and I mean to fight for this one my own way. Your friend Willa." She did not fully know, when she sealed it, what her own way was going to be. That is the honest truth of it. Some choices we make in one stroke, and some we make the way water cuts a canyon day by day, and only see the shape of it afterward. In September, Dunmore stopped smiling and started filing. Word came up from the county seat with a freighter, and the word was this. The Ash Hollow Bank had recorded a bill of transfer, dated back to 1881, and bearing the signature of Beckett's father, conveying full and clear title of Red Willow Ranch to the bank as security, superseding all prior arrangements. On the strength of that paper, the bank had posted Red Willow for public foreclosure sale, land, buildings, brand, and cattle, to be cried at the fall cattle sale in Ash Hollow, the 3rd Saturday of October, Judge Tobias Marlowe presiding. Beckett rode to the recorder's office and paid his quarter for a copy, and that night he laid it on the kitchen table under the lamp and read it out loud to Willa, every whereas and thereunto, in the voice of a man reading his own obituary. Then he set it down and put his finger on the signature. "That is close," he said quietly. "That is very close. But my father made his B with a hard corner, like a fence brace. Whoever wrote this makes it round. And my father was flat on his back with pleurisy the whole month this claims to be signed. I know it, the doctor knows it, and God knows it. Trouble is, the paper is on the record, and the record is what a sale runs on. Then, we do not argue the paper," Willa said slowly. "We break it. A forgery only stands where nothing solid contradicts it. What contradicts a false paper is a true one." She heard her own words land in the room, and something in her chest turned over like a key. Beckett was watching her, tired and steady. "You have a lawyer's head under that hat," he said. "If there is a true paper anywhere on this earth that says Dunmore cannot have clear title to Red Willow, I would give 10 years of my life to hold it." She almost told him then. "You should know that." She stood at the edge of it with her heart hammering, and what pulled her back was not cowardice, it was the sale. A claim whispered in a kitchen can be called a sweetheart's invention, a hired girl's scheme, and Dunmore would call it exactly that, and worse. But a claim standing in the bank's own book, read out in public, in front of the judge and the county, that no man could laugh away. She lay awake most of that night, and by morning she knew her ground the way you know a pasture you have ridden in the dark. Her father's note, the bank's ledger, the open sale. It was the ledger at Red Willow that finally broke the secret open, as truth generally breaks, at its own hour and not at ours. The first hard frost came, and with the outside work slacking, Willa sat at the kitchen table bringing the accounts current for October. Beckett, hunting through his father's roll-top desk for the doctor's old bills to prove the pleurisy, worked the stuck bottom drawer loose with a chisel and found beneath the liner paper a flat oilcloth packet tied with waxed string that no living person had touched in 6 years. Inside was a single sheet, written close, dated the 4th of February 1877. He read it once standing and once sitting, and then he did not read anything for a while. Then he crossed the room and set it down on the open ledger, beside the columns Willa had just finished, her neat square figures with the little flat-topped 4s and the 7s crossed through, a tally hand as particular as a face. The note on the old paper was written in that same hand. The 4s were the same 4s. The 7s wore the same crossbar. At the bottom of the note, above his father's hard-cornered signature, stood another. Marcus Prentice. Willa, Beckett said, and his voice was careful, like a man carrying something full to the brim. Where did you learn your figures? From my father, she said. And then she looked down at what lay beside her hand and went white, and then very calm, the calm of a thing finally arriving. He taught me my tally hand at his own knee. I never could make a 4 anyway but his. Received of Marcus Prentice, horse trader, the sum of $800 in gold coin. Beckett read aloud, slow, which sum has this day saved Red Willow Ranch and every soul on it, and in consideration whereof I convey to the said Marcus Prentice, his heirs and assigns forever, an undivided 1/2 interest in the said ranch, its lands and water, to be recorded at the Ash Hollow Bank. He would take no other security, and I offered none, for we neither of us expected me to live to repay it. If any man reads this after me, know that Marcus Prentice asked for nothing, and that this is the only debt I ever carried gladly. Beckett laid the paper down. Half of Red Willow belongs to Marcus Prentice's heir. You knew when you rode in. I knew before I rode in. She made herself hold his eyes, though it cost her. I found the deed copy in his papers after the fever took him, recorded at the Ash Hollow Bank, in the bank's own deed ledger, folio 211. I came to see the land my father bled for. I told myself I only wanted to look at it. Then I saw what Dunmore was fixing to do, and I stayed. And I said nothing, Beckett, because I would not buy my place here with paper. I wanted to earn it with my hands first, so that whatever came, you would know what I was before you knew what I had. If that was wrong, it was a wrong I chose with my eyes open. The silence stretched long enough to hurt. Then Beckett Sumner did the thing that tells you everything about the man. He laughed, low and wondering, and shook his head and said, 6 years this ranch has been paying interest to a thief on land that half belongs to the one hand I ever hired, who works harder than I do. He turned the old note gently with one finger, as if it were a living thing. Your father saved this ranch once, Willa. It appears you came to do it twice. It runs in the hand. The 3rd Saturday of October came in bright and cold, and the whole county came with it, for a foreclosure sale is the frontier's own theatre, and nobody misses the show. Cattle bawled in the crowded pens, wagons kept rolling in until the street could hold no more, and Judge Tobias Marlowe climbed the plank platform by the scales and took his seat behind the table, a dry, unhurried man with a face like weathered granite. Dunmore arrived in the dove-grey coat with his clerk and his lawyer, and the lawyer read out the bill of transfer in a high courtroom voice, the whereases and the thereuntos, the round-cornered signature, the debt, the default, and moved that Red Willow Ranch be cried for sale to satisfy the Ash Hollow Bank's clear and unencumbered title. Anything contrary, said Judge Marlowe, in the tone of a man asking whether anyone objected to sunrise, speak it now. The bank has no clear title to sell, Beckett said, loud enough to carry to the pens, and I do not ask the court to take my word. I ask it to take the bank's. Judge, the law requires the bank's deed ledger to be produced at its own foreclosure. I call for the book. Folio 211. You could hear the wind in the flags. Dunmore's smile stayed nailed on, but his eyes went quick and small, and he began to say the ledger was bank property, confidential, unnecessary, irregular, and Judge Marlowe listened the way granite listens, and then said, The book, Mr. Dunmore. Your sale runs on your records. Produce them or withdraw your action. And there was nothing for it. The clerk was sent, and the crowd waited, and the big canvas-back deed ledger came up the street in both his arms like a coffin, and was laid on the judge's table, and opened, and the pages turned, and stopped. Read it out, said the judge. The clerk's voice shook on the first line and steadied. Folio 211, recorded this 9th day of February 1877. Conveyance of undivided 1/2 interest in Red Willow Ranch, together with lands and water rights appertaining from the owner of record to Marcus Prentice, horse trader of the Wind River country, his heirs and assigns forever. Consideration $800 gold entered by the hand of the bank. Then, in 1881, Judge Marlowe said, into the roaring quiet, the elder Sumner could not lawfully convey full and clear title to this bank or to anybody, because he did not own full title to convey. He owned half. The bank's own book says so, in the bank's own hand, 4 years before the bank's own paper, which makes the instrument this sale rests on worth exactly nothing, and raises a question about how it came to exist that I intend to pursue with the county attorney. He let that sit a moment on Dunmore's dove-grey shoulders. Then he looked out over the crowd. The record names Marcus Prentice, his heirs and assigns. Is the heir of Marcus Prentice present, and does she claim her interest? Willa stood up from the rail she had been leaning on. She was not dressed for church, she was dressed for work, boots and riding skirt and her father's old coat, and she walked through that crowd with her chin level and her braid down her back, and every soul in Ash Hollow watched her come, the woman hand from Red Willow, the one who stacked the hay. I am Willa Prentice, she said. Marcus Prentice was my father. I claim my half of Red Willow. And then, because she was her father's daughter, she said the rest of it. I have been claiming it since May, with a rope and a branding iron and a set of books that balance. The paper only agrees with me. The foreclosure was thrown out before the scales weighed a single steer. The forged transfer went to the county attorney, and the interest arithmetic went with it, and by spring the Ash Hollow Bank had a new man behind the desk, and Horace Dunmore had left the territory between a Friday and a Monday, unmourned, the way spiders leave a swept house. Folks tell it that the last thing he heard as his buggy rolled out was the auctioneer crying fat Red Willow steers at the best price paid in Ash Hollow in 6 years. They were married at Red Willow in June, under the big cottonwood by the creek, with Amos standing up stiff in a collar, and old Reuben Coulter giving the bride away and grumbling, loud enough for the county to hear, that she had done it the long way around, but he supposed the result would answer. There were 2 papers in the family Bible from that day forward. One was the marriage certificate, the other was a note written close in a square tally hand, dated the 4th of February 1877, a debt of kindness that had waited 6 years in a stuck drawer to save the same ranch twice. Beckett framed nothing and hid nothing. He said a house ought to know what holds it up, and on winter evenings, when the wind worked the eaves, Willa would sometimes open the ledger and run her thumb down the columns, down the flat-topped 4s and the crossed 7s, her father's hand alive in her own. What is honestly given does not die, friends, and what is quietly owed comes home at last. That is the whole gospel of this story, and I did not make it up, I only carried it to you. If it warmed you the way it warms me, then pull your chair back up to this fire whenever the road brings you by, for there are more true stories of that country still to tell, and the fire is not going anywhere.